Is Mike Williams a wide receiver one for the rest of the fantasy football season? That and much, much more on tonight's episode of the Mailbag Show. And Troy, I want to throw that to you quick. Is Mike Williams a wide receiver one this year?
Absolutely, yes. If you asked me before the season, I probably would have given you a different answer. But absolutely, he is. So this man, he's averaging 7.3 receptions, 10 targets, and about 98 yards on the season. And he has over a 25% target share. And look, the Chargers, they're just humming, right? They look good. Herbert is throwing, I'm not sure his average, I believe it's close to 300 yards. And I just don't see that slowing down anytime soon. I believe with the Chargers, they have like a 1A, 1B. There's no wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. Him and Keenan Allen both are getting a lot of volume. And I just don't see it slowing down. So for me, I say absolutely yes. I think Mike Williams keeps us rolling.
And you called it out, that 25% target share. That's what jumps out to me. And that is what I did not expect at all this year. You know, you don't want to really change your takes too much this early in the season. But Chad, same question to you. Are you considering Mike Williams a wide receiver one for the remainder of the 2021 season?
Yeah, I think you mentioned the utilization that is really the key. You know, you can have Rondell Moore weeks where maybe the snaps and routes don't really align with a big day, you know, and it's an outlier performance, Juwan Johnson. But yeah, with Mike Williams, it's there. He's basically right there neck and neck in target share with Keenan Allen. And I think one of the other things is no wide receiver 3 presence. You know, we thought maybe Jalen Guyton would take a step. They drafted Josh Palmer. And Jared Cook has been a little underwhelming. You know, I was a big fan of him being maybe a top 10, top 12 guy. So the fact that it funnels through 3 guys, a running back and 2 wide receivers, and you have an elite quarterback, I think that's a really good equation to saying guys could finish in the top 12. That's the historical formula. And just to have one thing, that Mike Williams, this is a really rare scenario all the way out in year 5, that if he actually banks this, it's Devontae Parker like, but he could even be better than Devontae.
I think we lost Chad for just a second.
Season. Top 24 season this late. So this is a 7% scenario even for round 1 guy. So Mike Williams coming from the ashes, you know, I mean, he has been top 40, top 50 for his season, but he looks the part and
yeah, I couldn't agree more. He does look the part, and we knew that. And I think that's the reason that people are so trepidatious to buy in right now, is because people wanted it to happen last year. They wanted it to happen the year before and the year before, and we kept buying into Mike Williams, and it just never really happened. And now it finally is happening. And yeah, like you said, this 5th-year breakout is bizarre. So do we expect this next year? Like, is Alan Lazard finally going to break out next year? Probably not. But what we're seeing is an insane utilization right now from Mike Williams. He is the focal point of that offense. You know, Joe Lombardi talked about him being that X receiver in the Michael Thomas role. And, you know, I didn't want to buy into that because that just sounded like, you know, that typical camp hype that you get around players. But that's exactly what we're seeing right now, is that he is doing a lot more than just stretching the field and making these acrobatic catches. He is running a diverse route tree, getting a lot of catches, and becoming what I consider to be a wide receiver 1. So I think we are all in agreement on this one. Before we go into the rest of the questions, I just want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Footballguys Mailbag Show. Just a reminder that you can send any questions you have into mailbag@footballguys.com. And Troy and myself, and typically Victoria, but as you can see today, we are joined with Chad Parsons, who's going to help us out a little bit. We will get those questions for you. And then at the end of the show, we will go into the chat and answer questions there live as well. So be sure to start dropping those questions in the chat so we can get to them at the end of the show. If you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube page, be sure to do that at youtube.com/footballguystv, where you can see this show, the Audible, the DFS Power Grid, the Dynasty Show, the Dynasty Newsletter Show, and everything else that the Football Guys team has to offer.
So guys, if you love fantasy football, then listen up. You have to join this NFL's season's hottest and easiest daily contest. You can flex on the competition in FanUp's daily Flex Ball contest to win cash in the hottest brand prizes. It combines the best of redraft and best ball formats. There's no salary caps, drafts, or waivers. FanUp allows you to pick a new team daily and stack your roster however you like. You can take on your friends every week, so sign up right now. Enter before Thursday Night Football, Sunday games, and Monday Night Football each week to win FanUp bonus prizes from Fanatics. Download the FanUp app now in Apple stores or go to fanup.app. Just be fans.
If you haven't signed up for FanUp already, be sure to do that. But let's go to the rest of the questions. And this is a good one right now. We got this from Jeff Bell, and it's kind of a broad question, but just kind of thinking of your rankings. Jeff is interested in going out and targeting Chris Carson. The way that this question was portrayed, I have a feeling that he's trying to get Chris Carson from you in a league, Troy. Maybe I misinterpreted that question a little bit, but he's saying, who would you be trying to trade away to get Chris Carson right now? And Troy, I'll start with you. Are there any guys specifically on your roster that you'd be looking to ship off to bring in Chris Carson in a redraft league?
So what's funny is he asked this question because we're in a dynasty league together, and I needed running backs. So I was so desperate for running backs. I had to play Kerryon Johnson last week. So I was extremely desperate. So I actually had to trade Laviska Shenault in order to get Shenault, and I think a second in order to get Chris Carson, because I have a competitor. I'm a competitor, but that's the reason why he said it. But I think in a redraft format, you should want him, right? He's an RB1, I believe, for the rest of the season. I believe in Dynasty. I know he's an older running back, but I would like Chris Carson. I know people want to jump ship at a certain point when it comes to older running backs. You got to sell now because the crash is coming, but we've seen that being debunked by a few running backs now. So I don't think you necessarily have to trade him. Obviously, it's price dependent, but for me, who am I trying to trade? If you could just trade like a young wide receiver that somebody might have more faith in than you do, maybe that's what I would go for in Dynasty.
Now, what are you thinking, Chad? And you're the Dynasty guy here. I've watched a lot of your shows, and when it comes to breaking down trades and trade value, that's what you do. So who are some guys that you would be looking for to ship off in order to get Chris Carson? Is he a guy that you're buying into at this stage in his career?
No, I think there's a little bang for your buck. Like, is he really cheaper than, say, Austin Eckler or guy? I mean, I would rather pay more for Ezekiel Elliott, for example, if you're going in the 25, 26, 27-year-old running back bucket. I think in general, buying running backs in Dynasty or in redraft is pretty risky. Like, I would rather just allocate extra roster spots to the backup guys and take shots that they hit later on in the season. If injury strikes, Chuba Hubbard now, he has a little window here of 1, 2, 3+ starts, and putting those things together, Alexander Madison. So I like to address it that way, just as a general umbrella statement. But if you are getting Carson, I always find the easiest thing to do is to cross position. So if you're strong, and they're weak at a tight end or quarterback spot, maybe you can find a fit. But wide receiver to running back, and flipping those positions. So I would look, like you mentioned with Laviska Shenault, I think those are great examples of a guy. Maybe Henry Ruggs has enough juice that maybe you have to add a 3rd-round pick or a 2nd-round pick to get to Chris Carson. But trading and shifting the strengths of your team. I just don't really have running back weaknesses because of how I build my teams. But if you do, then I would say first try with roster spots. Just can you shed some tight ends or something like that and end up acquiring more running backs off the waiver wire? Or can you, again, those younger guys, Shenault or Ruggs or someone like that's down your wide receiver depth chart?
Yeah, and I agree with you. From a dynasty standpoint, I'm not really all that interested in Chris Carson, but from a redraft standpoint, I think that he has all of the makings to finish as a top 10 guy this year. And we haven't really seen the Seattle offense clicking yet, outside of some big plays from Tyler Lockett. But at the end of the day, he is the running back on a Russell Wilson led team, and I don't think that he's got much more in the tank after this. He's taken a lot of carries, he's had some injuries, so this might be the last year. They've got an out in his contract after this year, but I'm all in on him in redraft right now, and I think that if you can ship off, just about any wide receiver too to bring in Chris Carson, just with the positional scarcity you're getting at running back, I do like that move. But from a dynasty standpoint, he's somebody that I'm staying away from right now.
And one other point on Carson is that Rashad Penny, he's basically never been healthy, and they have questions. I mean, Alex Collins, they just brought in Travis Homer, not really a guy that's going to handle a workload. So it is on Carson and his health. And like you said, there's going to be no 1A, 1B sort of situation that we see going forward. So wheels up for Carson this year.
Yeah, and everybody last year was thinking that DJ Dallas was going to step into this role, but as soon as Carson got hurt and it was DJ Dallas's opportunity, he got one game, and that trial run went so poorly that they pulled Alex Collins off the street after not playing for almost 2 entire years just to plug him in. So people that are thinking that DJ Dallas is going to cut into the role, Rashad Penny, I don't really see it happening. And like you said, wheels up for Chris Carson this year. I think that he's going to have a great 2021 season. If we're talking dynasty, though, he's somebody that I'm not really going out and targeting. talking about another guy right now who has, seen a pretty big volume shift in these first couple of weeks. Jacob Sanderson is asking us, would you trade away Cooper Kupp for any wide receivers besides Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, or Stephon Diggs? So looking at rest of the season rankings, is there anybody that you're valuing ahead of Cooper Kupp? Chad, why don't you start us off here? What do you think?
No, I think that's a good starting list because what you're looking for, and honestly, I don't think I'd do it for Diggs. Diggs, I think the level of competition for targets, you're seeing 3 other wide receivers, 2 to 3, and then you're also seeing Dawson Knox take a little bit of a step forward. And could it just be a slow start? Sure. But I think when you look at Hill, Adams, and Kupp and what they have market share wise and the connection to their quarterbacks, they are pretty much the trio there where Cooper Kupp atop the board, lapping the position. And I just don't think you can move off of players like that. It's kind of like right now, he's kind of like the Christian McCaffrey of the wide receiver position in terms of the advantage he gives you versus your peers, especially starting 3 or more. So I think you have to be very careful about, especially in redraft, doing a 1 for 2 or 1 for 3 and getting quote unquote depth elsewhere, because the studs and the guys that are 20 plus, 25 plus points per game are hard to replicate and find a new one.
Yeah, and the big thing right now is just how consistent he's been. He is the only wide receiver through the first 3 weeks that has finished as a wide receiver 1 in each of those 3 weeks. And, we knew that it was going to be somebody. We didn't know if it was going to be Cooper Kupp or whether it was going to be Robert Woods, but Matt Stafford does have a penchant for finding his guy and hyper targeting him. And, it's pretty easy to see through these first 3 weeks that Cooper Kupp is that guy. So I'm with you. I don't know if I'm making that trade straight up for Diggs. I think Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams are the only guys that I'm really entertaining. But at that point, why even make the switch? I mean, it's just pretty much a 1-for-1 trade at that point. So let me ask you the same question, Troy. Are you trading away Cooper Kupp for anybody besides these 3 receivers?
I'm with you guys. What I want to know is I want to know how Robert Woods could get an invite to breakfast, because apparently that was what all this came, right? He was going to breakfast with Cooper Kupp. We didn't know until the first game. They had this whole connection thing, but nah. In terms of this question, I'm not trading Cooper Kupp for anybody. You guys already said it. His consistency and the amount of targets that he's getting, it's almost unheard of. So yeah, it's just completely unfair. I'm, again, in this particular situation, I'm not even gonna, there's no point in really doing this trade. Again, maybe for Hill, Adams, if I had Cooper Kupp, I'm just gonna riding it, man. Like it makes sense to do a 1-on-1. I get it, just because they're Adams and Hill, but if I'm having Cooper Kupp, I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. So I'm just gonna keep him on my team and just keep winning the weeks.
Robert Woods has to be better, though, right? I mean, he's outside the top 40, 45, and he's been pretty pedestrian. He has to, right? I mean, I actually thought both of these guys were going to be top 18 this year, and he's a far way off through 3 weeks.
Yeah, and kind of the way that I'm looking at this is I think that Robert Woods, he excels on those short and intermediate routes. And that's exactly what we see right now in Detroit. They kind of have to just, I don't want to say dumb the playbook down, but at least shorten the field a little bit for Jared Goff, because he can't hit those deep throws. So now with Matthew Stafford being there, we're seeing a completely different offense. And it's not just Cooper Kupp getting down the field, it's Deshaun Jackson as well. And suddenly they have this deep element to their playbook that we haven't ever seen with Jared Goff there. So my kind of theory through these first few weeks is that, Robert Woods was a benefactor of Jared Goff and his inability to push the ball. Now with somebody that has a bigger arm that can push the ball down the field, that's where you're seeing Cooper Kupp. He's blowing the top off of defenses. You're seeing Deshaun Jackson suddenly rewind the clock. I don't know if there's going to be that much of an opportunity for Robert Woods without Jared Goff there. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, let's not pretend like Deshaun Jackson's going to be a weekly thing. I mean, he's probably going to have 2 to 3 more good games, meaning 100 yards and a touchdown the rest of the year. So that I can explain, in my head, supporting Robert Woods, I can explain that one away in week 3. And the Buccaneers are suspect on the back end. So I think there will be tougher secondaries that short passing game, the yards after catch for Woods will be a benefit and more in play. So, and the touchdown, strong offense. He's still the number 2. He's still getting a good target share. So I do think he'll come around, and he is a potential buy low or buy lower than he was a few weeks ago.
And yeah, I think that he's absolutely going to outperform where he's at right now at wide receiver 40 something, but I don't know if he's going to live up to that, the late teens, early 20s that he was getting drafted at. But if you can get him for cheaper than that, I think that he is assuredly going to at least take a step forward from what we've seen through the first few weeks. On to the next question. We've got Jeremiah asking us, are there any running backs in Houston worth rostering at this point? Simple question. We got Phillip Lindsay, David Johnson, Mark Ingram. They've all punched some touches in, but we haven't seen consistency from any of these guys. So Troy, start us off. In your classic redraft league, should you be rostering anybody in Houston?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And from what we've seen, look, the week 26 carries for Mark Ingram. I know, like, I look after that, look, I picked him up on one roster too. I'm like, whoa, let me see what this happens. And clearly that didn't amount to anything for the rest of the weeks. It's just too messy. We have no idea who's the guy. And now with Tyrod, I feel again with Tyrod, maybe I would feel a little bit more confident, but it's just too ugly. It's too unpredictable. It's like the San Francisco 49ers, but much, much worse. So absolutely not.
What are you thinking, Chad? I mean, are any of these guys on your radar in redraft or no?
I'll say on the positive side that with teams that are going to struggle, you want the guy who's going to catch passes. Right now, that appears to be David Johnson running the routes, getting the targets. It's still not good. But in a typical Houston week, the biggest upside, I do think, squint your way to David Johnson. However, that doesn't mean you should roster any of them. And one of the things, Mark Ingram sucked you in because he was so cheap going into week 1. He was kind of like the Jets situation of if it was Ty Johnson you were supporting or Tevin Coleman or whatever, you say, I have a chance to have a running back 1 for a team. And both of them turned out to be inconsequential so far, and it doesn't matter. But I think with Ingram, like the one thing, I've made more trades selling Mark Ingram in my Dynasty leagues after week 1 than any other player through 3 weeks by far, because I was like, this is the signal, Jerry. This is the signal. You have to get out now. It was like Todd Gurley last year when he had that stretch of scoring touchdowns and the schedule just turned ice cold partway through the year. And it was like, this is your last chance. If you don't do it this week, it's over. And trust me, it was over. Like you had nothing. He's on waiver wires right now. But yeah, with Mark Ingram, if Tyrod Taylor comes back, I think there's a chance. You know, when do they play Jacksonville again? Hopefully it's not week 18. But but that might be, you know, again, one of their best chances. And so, no, I mean, a touchdown doesn't even save Mark Ingram, right? I mean, he still might score 10, 11, 12 points, which doesn't even matter. So be very careful. If there's an injury, if we get clarity down to 2 guys or 1 in the future, let's start caring, but that's not where we are.
Yeah, and I'm with you in theory, Chad. I really am. And I tweeted this out a couple weeks ago where I said, hey, you know, right now, Carolina's looking kind of hot. This might be a good opportunity for you to pick up David Johnson, plug him in your flex. And, you know, if they're trailing, you're going to see some opportunities there. But so far this season, he saw 4 targets in week 1. He saw 2 targets in week 2, and he didn't see a single target last week. So, you know, I was somebody that was kind of beating the drum for David Johnson for the same exact reasons that you were saying. You know, this offseason, I was thinking that they were going to be trailing a lot. David Johnson would be running the routes. He'd be picking up some of these garbage time, you know, PPR points, but I'm just not seeing it happen right now. So, you know, there might be an opportunity down the road if he can shake the rust off a little bit. But I mean, is Phillip Lindsay somebody worth eyeballing? I know you said you shipped off Mark Ingram. Does Phillip Lindsay have any sort of value, or is it just nobody except for the occasional week that David Johnson might pop?
No, you got to have clarity. And that's the thing. You've got a committee on a bad team. So that's the worst combination. And we have that with the Jets too. You know, so and people expect, I think Michael Carter is taking a step forward, but here with Houston, you've got 3 functional with a profile running backs, and it's a mess. So if Tyrod Taylor comes back, that would be one thing I would look for. You know, if you have an injury to one of them, that's another thing I would look for. Until then, though, if you drop somebody, I know everyone fears, oh, if I drop them and someone else pick them up, oh, that's my last chance. I don't think so. I think that is just someone taking the bait on a roster albatross, and they might drop them in 1 or 2 weeks when the bye weeks start. So whatever you think is good now, remember, you're going to have to do some streamers. You're going to have injuries. You're going to have bye weeks going for like 2 months straight. There's no way these guys under current circumstances survive all that for the roster spots.
Yeah, fantastic point. Yeah, that's a really good point that we don't think about right now. You know, if you avoided the injury bug, you're feeling really good about your roster the whole way through, but bye weeks are coming up soon, and you're going to have to figure out ways to maneuver through those. We got a question coming in from Berto here, and this isn't really a fantasy football question, but I think it's something worth discussing because it could open up opportunities for guys on the Chicago Bears. And Berto was asking, will Matt Nagy get fired this week if he loses to the Detroit Lions? Troy, do you think that he's going to get fired? And if he does that give us some sort of hope for Allen Robinson and David Montgomery, who have been abysmal for the first 3 weeks?
I don't think he's going to get fired. For some reason, not at least after this game. Maybe this is my personal opinion, but I think they're going to let the season play out, because the way I see it, right, is this: if he didn't get fired after all the things that we saw with the Mitch and all this horrible seasons in the past, I feel like they're going to at least give him a shot with Justin Fields in his rookie year. I think at least to the end of the season, we'll see. We know the game plan last week was absolutely terrible. The way they utilized Justin Fields didn't make any sense. Again, I feel like he didn't design the offense for Justin Fields last week. And again, as a head coach in the league, it was very bizarre to watch. So if we see more of that, maybe he's going to see his exit sooner rather than later. But I don't see him getting fired if they happen to lose to the Lions this week.
So we did see a report that came out yesterday from Sports Mockery, and the name Sports Mockery, it doesn't sound legit, but they actually do come out with pretty reputable sources and information here. And they said that they are thinking about possibly firing Matt Nagy, and that a loss this week could be the nail in the coffin. So that's what the reports are saying. But let me just kind of throw you a little bit of a curveball here, Chad. If Matt Nagy does get fired, do you think that bodes well for Allen Robinson and David Montgomery?
Well, those are the two guys we want saved, right? Sidebar, if you're bald, don't wear a visor. There's no point. It actually, I think, more concentrates the sun to your balding chrome domus. So I've never understood that look at all.
Me
so
neither.
Please stop, Matthew. Please stop.
My high school English teacher was also my freshman year football coach, completely bald, wore a visor throughout doubles the entire season, and then came into the first day of camp or the first day of school as a teacher just with this big red ring on top of his head. And
wonder where that came from.
Never understood it. Yeah, never understood it.
But yeah, one of my critical questions is Allen Robinson with Justin Fields and with Matt Nagy and this whole situation, is he startable at this point? I mean, how low are you willing to go? Because it is brutal. And his start rate has been sky high every week. I think it has to soften this week. It was in the 80s last week, which is still, I mean, you're basically not benching him, a wide receiver with that start rate. So Justin Fields scares me. Now, shouldn't losing to the Lions typically, now, Baltimore almost did that. So, but I think that was like their Super Bowl. I think they're going to, if the Bears lose coming off of that game for Detroit, I think that is pretty damning. So just be careful about, what that means. And Detroit, trying to play upstart, but I think Allen Robinson is very close to the bench right now for a lot of lineup decisions because of Fields, but also this offense gives nothing to be inspired about.
And I feel like that has been such a hot topic these last couple of days is what to do with Allen Robinson. Are you trying to buy low right now? Or are you trying to just sell low and cut your losses while you can? Are you just holding him? And if you are holding him, do you put him in your starting lineup? Do you put him on your bench? And it's tough because we have seen Allen Robinson. I mean, he has made a career out of playing on bad teams with poor quarterback play and still putting up wide receiver 1 numbers. But this year just feels a little bit different. The targets aren't there. You've got a quarterback that clearly isn't, just comfortable on an NFL field for the time being. So what would you do this week if you've got him, Chad? Are you benching him or are you keeping him in your lineup?
Well, Detroit is pretty juicy. Is Andy Dalton healthy? Can we start? No one's ever chanted for Andy Dalton, but I feel like we need that. If you have Allen Robinson, I feel like you want to chant for Andy Dalton to get back in there. And that's what the Bears said. Like they didn't want to play Justin Fields. The injury prompted that. I think Fields has to play better. It's hard not to. Maybe Nathan Peterman's like, that guy's pretty good. But I feel like you were saying with the target share, I mean, he's over 25% on the season. He had a third of them last week. And really this offense is one that's searching for a wide receiver 3. Cole Kmet hasn't been a huge part. That hasn't been a breakout for him. So I do think in the wide receiver 3-4 discussion, that he's probably going to get the nod. But I know for sure there's some teams that are strong enough at wide receiver. We mentioned Mike Williams. You weren't counting on him, for example. And Cooper Kupp, maybe you didn't have as much confidence as you have right now, 3 weeks later. So I think there's scenarios where he's on more benches than people want to realize this week. But I think from a market share perspective, it's a relatively high floor play.
Yeah. And I think that playing against, like you said, Detroit is a juicy matchup. If there ever is, you talk about getting right against Detroit. I feel like we've just been saying that for years and years and years, but I feel like this is the chance where you could see it. And I also agree with you that Andy Dalton is better for Allen Robinson. And a lot of people aren't willing to swallow that pill because they just think, wheels up for Justin Fields. But Andy Dalton, his entire career in Cincinnati, he targeted AJ Green 150 times a season. That's the reason that Allen Robinson has been effective. So I agree with you, Chad.
And let's remember that last week, if Marquise Brown could catch, they would have won by 20. So that game does not come down to a historic kick that and it was almost like what did we just see upset? with Detroit. I mean, that again wouldn't have happened because I don't think a lot of people realize. I mean, Brown would have gone for 30
3
plus
drops.
points. Yeah.
Oh.
And right in the old breadbasket. And they get all the way down. They had a number of factors that go into them needing that last second kick. So
yeah, one week after a primetime game where Marquise Brown is finally living up to his potential, making these crazy contested catches, and we're like, all right, Marquise Brown is finally there, and then just drop after drop after drop.
And now Rashad Bateman's coming back. So this is gonna be fun. Let's start this fire.
I think this week is going. Look, I think by 2 weeks from now, Rashad Bateman is going to be a real thing. This week, I don't know if he's going to just be like, oh, Rashad Bateman we're expected to be.
Yeah, I hope we get some Rashad Bateman talk. So if you're watching the show right now, drop your questions in the chat. We got a few left to get through, and then we will go to the chat. Please, I'm dying to talk about Rashad Bateman. So somebody ask us a Rashad Bateman question so we can get to that at the end. But the next question that we got here is from Jesper Robbins, and he is saying, is AJ Dillon droppable in a 10-team redraft league with 5 bench spots? So we're not looking at huge rosters here. And in a league like this, there is going to be some decent talent on the waiver wire. So, Troy, let me start you off here. If you're in a 10-team league with 5 bench spots, are you dropping AJ Dillon?
Yes, I am. I'm in 10-team league, just like you said. There's a lot of talent on the bench that you have. I feel like AJ Dillon, again, he doesn't have as much standalone value as a lot of us have hoped for in the beginning of the season. Like, we're hoping that he's somehow filled that Jamal Williams role. So even him, he had some games where he was more effective than the others, last year and years before, but we just haven't seen it from AJ Dillon. He was supposed to be the next Derrick Henry, y'all. And we haven't seen that. That's what some people comped him to. But unfortunately, his utilization, it's the Aaron Jones show. I just believe there's other ways you can use a short bench like that. So for me personally, he's okay to drop him in that shallow of a league.
What do you
think?
Hurting
my soul,
Dad?
Troy. Hurting my soul.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna give a counter on why you would keep AJ Dillon. First of all, you have to have just your starting quarterback. If that means, and unless you have an absolute stud, then in a bye week, you would pick up one additional and float that spot one time. But if you stream, and in a 10-team league with that shallow, you can stream every week. Derek Carr might be available this week. You go to Tannehill a different week. So one quarterback spot. The other thing, one tight end spot. And I think you can find room in your bench for 3 or 4 backup running backs. Maybe you got one extra wide receiver if you're strong. But again, there's going to be streamers at every position. The thing with Dillon, I would say, is for me, he's a tier 1 backup running back, a guy that can change your season. So those are the exceptions you make. Obviously, Karrem Hunt could be someone that you flex, but guys like Pollard, Dillon, Madison, Javonte Williams, I think Jamal Williams, Chuba Hubbard right now for 3 weeks. These are the types of guys you have to roster. So I think with Dillon, you hold out as long as you can. Now, if you have a bunch of injuries, if you get in a real bye week crunch in 3 weeks, so be it. But any week you have, there's 1 to 2 starting running backs that are going to go out, in a typical week. So that could miss time the following week. And I think it's just dangerous to drop that type of human hand grenade, as Jordan McNamara likes to say, that can really blow up a league. Like if you start, without Aaron Jones, if you start AJ Dillon in your lineup with a clarified start, we saw with Madison, he went for 20 plus and he didn't even score a touchdown. So I think you have to be really careful about letting those small subset of guys. We're not talking, I'm not mentioning like Zach Moss in this or, Tony Jones, like not every backup I'm going to say this about, but there's 5 to 8 guys that I think you got to have 3 or 4 of them and you got a chance to win your league.
So I would throw Tony Jones in that, but I'm going to fully agree with you, Chad, that I do think that's kind of how you play this league. You don't want to have a bench with any quarterbacks, defenses, tight ends, anything like that. Your bench, and I'm the same way. I want maybe one extra wide receiver that I can kind of rotate in there, but all I'm doing is looking for guys that are going to have immense upside on my bench, and it's those elite handcuff running backs that you talked about. So I also agree with you, Troy, that, we thought that AJ Dillon might have some flex value here. And what we're seeing in Green Bay is something very different. I thought that AJ Dillon was going to carve out more of a role in this offense than Jamal Williams was able to the last couple of years. But what we're seeing is that Aaron Jones is just turning into a workhorse back there. AJ Dillon doesn't have any sort of standalone value when Aaron Jones is healthy. But like we saw last year against Tennessee, and like we saw last week, like you mentioned with Alexander Madison, if something is to happen to Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon could very well finish as a weekly RB1. So I think that dropping AJ Dillon in any sort of league right now is pretty silly. You know, it might be frustrating having a guy that's only going to put up 2-3 points on your bench on any given week, but know that if something happens to Aaron Jones, you've got an absolute gold mine on your roster, and you don't have to spend it, you know, a single dollar of your fab to plug him in. On to the next question, and this one comes from Chris Rismiller, and he's saying, how do you feel about trading a top tier player for a second tier player if it may help you fill a position of need? And what he talked about is, you know, if you've just got an immense plethora of running backs, are you okay trading and losing a little bit of value if it means that you're helping your wide receiver core? So I like these questions. You know, it's not just your typical start sit. It's a little conceptual here. And Chad, why don't you start us off? Are you okay giving up some value if it means filling a positional need on a team?
I do think, you know, you draft for talent and trade for need. So I think rebalancing in season, whether it's redraft or dynasty, is the way to do it, you know, and not thinking about, I filled my starting lineup in the first 6 to 7 rounds. And then you know, and you just, you know, step on through, you know, and it's very pragmatic through the draft. I think you have to get the best players possible. And that if that's 5 receivers or 5 running backs to start your draft, so be it, and figure out the rest. But yeah, I think dropping down, he specifically said top tier. So Chris, I have a little bit of concern because top tier, as we mentioned, is that Tyreek Hill? Is that Cooper Kupp? I mean, if you're going true stratosphere there, I have a little bit of an issue because if they're a difference maker, again, those are unicorns and hard to find. And so be very careful about the drop down. And I would say the first thing I always say is start bottom to top, which means look at the waiver wire. Are there guys out there that can help you and supplement your weak position? If that isn't acceptable to you, then look for undervalued players, first of all. So when you say drop to a second tier player, is that a top tier player that's underperforming? You know, a slow start. So I would use all those factors in mind, but I would say be very careful. You specified that. I was actually going to go towards quarterback and tight ends and some other concepts there, but that clarity of selling a running back, you've got to be very strong to sell a top tier running back, in my opinion, because you ride and die with those guys.
So I will give a little bit of context for this. You know, we're limited to how much we can fit on the screen here with StreamYard. But I just pulled up the email from Chris, and he said, for context, I'm in a 12-team PPR league, and I need running back help like everybody else playing fantasy football this year. He said his wide receivers are Calvin Ridley, AJ Brown, Michael Thomas, and Marquise Brown. So he's kind of flush there. And he said his tight ends are Kelsey and Darren Waller, where he is just loaded with tight end talent. But his running backs are Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Tyson Williams, and Trey Sermon. So he says, should I consider trading away A.J. Brown or Darren Waller for somebody like Damian Harris or Elijah Mitchell? I feel like that might be a little bit too big of a gap there.
That's not a second tier player. See, that's the whole thing about having actual details. So that's the danger there. And again, roster size is important. Like, you know, like Dave and I have said, I mean, if there's backup running backs out there, you can get them potentially for free. So that's one thing. And Elijah Mitchell, I mean, that is that is dicey. So this is not the right time with, I mean, Jermichael Hasty will be back at some point. Jeff Wilson will be back at some point. Sermon's going to be like, no, I think you've got to be select pause. Now, you mentioned Marquise Brown. Like, he might be a guy. Like, this might be the moment. Or maybe it's after this coming game. Maybe you roll it one more week, and then you say, you know, because it's the Lions and Bateman's not going to be, you know, in the mix. So that might be a great moment to then maybe get a running back, you know, and maybe supplement elsewhere. But I think that if you can flex Waller in addition to having Kelsey, I don't think out of the 2, 3, 4 tight ends that actually matter, I don't think you give one of the two up to give it to another team, because that's a massive upgrade for the other team. So if you're going to do it, do wide receiver, not one of your tight ends.
And sometimes that's what you got to think about when you're making trades is how much better is this going to make this other team? And if you're giving anybody a positional advantage with Darren Waller or Travis Kelce, you might want to pump the brakes on that. So, Troy, I think we're all in agreement here that you're not giving up A.J. Brown or Darren Waller for somebody like Elijah Mitchell. No, let's raise the bar just a little bit. Let's throw a hypothetical out there. Let's say A.J. Brown, you're struggling really badly with running backs. Let's say James Robinson, you know, a couple tiers ahead of Elijah Mitchell. Is that something you're maybe thinking about doing if you really need to fill a running back need?
Not James Robinson, not the way that I don't trust the Jacksonville Jaguars. I would say like if we talking It would have to be, look, it has to be someone of equal tier to me, right? If we talking like the Antonio Gibsons, if we're talking about that tier, which I don't know if anyone's gonna do, but if I'm trading in someone like Darren Waller or AJ Brown, I want someone of equal value who's on the same playing field. So it's gotta be, one of the elite running backs, Austin Eckler, Antonio Gibson, someone like that. Otherwise, you might as well just keep them and roll with the guys you got.
Are we concerned about Tennessee, though? I mean, it was pretty graphic that we saw Julio in and out pulling his regular, like he was in a different uniform, but it was the same thing we've seen for a couple of years now in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And now AJ Brown's on the shelf. I mean, they are going to be starting fumes. And frankly, when they all played, there still was something missing. I mean, Henry is his own thing, but this passing game leaves a lot to be desired from what we thought was going to be an explosive unit. I have some concern this year, not long term, with AJ Brown.
Now, don't get me wrong. I love AJ Brown as a talent and as a player, but isn't it kind of weird that he went in for double knee surgery at 23 years old and nobody was really that concerned about it? Everybody was so blinded with their love for AJ
Because
Brown
he
that
played
they
so
ignored
well.
it. Yeah, but now that's those legs are starting to bother him a little bit. So I hate slapping the injury prone label on anybody, especially this early in his career. But having that offseason knee surgery and now seeing some problems flaring up early in the season, I'm with you. I'm a little bit concerned for AJ Brown for the remainder of this season.
Yeah, I mean, shop him this week. If that doesn't work, maybe you go Marquise Brown next week, probably off a game where he doesn't drop 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, just I would say explore those two angles. But the other thing is it's early in the season. And if you've got some backup running backs, you can give that time. But also just you try to explore an angle or two. If that doesn't work, you don't have to force a trade. It's week 3 into week 4. So that's the other thing I would say is patience. And I know if you're sitting there 1 and 2, you feel like, this is it. If I lose this week, I'm out of it. You're not out of it. We actually got an extra week this year. So time is on your side.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more. And this is a fun time to trade, though, just because some people get so reactive that you can find really good value in trades. And then you're kind of in this balance between, all of the work that I've done in the offseason and what I've prepped for and the rankings and how I've analyzed these guys, and then what I've seen in the last 3 weeks. And you've got to find that balance between how you value these players. So I think trading this time of year is fun, but there's certainly a lot of risk baked into it. Let's go on. We've got 2 questions left, and then we will go to the chat. I already see some questions popping up in there, so keep dropping your questions in the chat, and we will get to these after these 2. We got a question here coming in from somebody on Twitter, and this is just a simple rest of season evaluation. Troy, I'll start with you on this one. Karrem Hunt or Allen Robinson in PPR leagues, who do you prefer for the remainder of the season?
I hate my answer, but it's Karrem Hunt. It's got to be Karrem Hunt. So listen. And it really, Andy Dalton's health, I will say, it really depends, right? Because if I had to make a decision now, it got to be Karrem Hunt. We've seen Allen Robinson do absolutely nothing all season. We've seen Karrem Hunt be productive every single week. And last week, he just, completely exploded. The Cleveland Browns are a very good offense, and Chubb and Hunt are their main offense, right? And then OBJ is back in the mix, and is more efficient, right? They're one of the most efficient running teams in the entire league. They're rush first, right? And then he's getting the passing work too. And we know the Bears are just a mess right now. And look, I love Allen Robinson, but I got to go with the guy who's been productive, who I see being productive for the rest of the season. I'm going Karrem Hunt.
What about you, Chad? Karrem Hunt or Allen Robinson rest of the season?
Rubber stamp it. Karrem Hunt, you can flex him if you want. We can be frustrated that both Chubb and Hunt are taking away from each other. But let's pose these scenarios. We really haven't seen this, but what if Chubb is out? What if Hunt is out? Like the other one's going to be what? A top 5 play minimum in a given week? Good offense. We don't have all the questions about Allen Robinson. Right now, I think if you said the rest of the season, Allen Robinson is top 30, I think we would take that based on what we've seen. So Hunt, you can flex him. But man, win your league upside if Chubb misses a month at the right time during the fantasy season. So I don't see, Darnell Mooney's out. Oh, that doesn't change almost anything. We don't really care. So I don't think there's a scenario where Robinson matters as much as Hunt this year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that Andy Dalton is suddenly just going to rewind the clock and look like Andy Dalton from 5 years ago and start the whole season and force feed Allen Robinson. So I'm worried about Allen Robinson. And like we talked about with A.J. Dillon, a guy like Karrem Hunt, that what we hoped A.J. Dillon would be, somebody that has standalone weekly value in your starting lineup, that has the potential to explode if there's an injury to the person ahead of him on the depth chart. That's a great asset to have. And that's what Karrem Hunt is. He finishes an RB1 last year in PPR leagues. If he keeps up the pace he's on this year, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are both going to be RB1s again this year. So had you asked me this question 3 years ago, I probably would have said Allen Robinson because I expected him to just do what he does and finish as a low-end wide receiver 1. But from what we've seen in the first few weeks, I'm going with Kareem Hunt right here because he looks like he is going to finish the season yet again as a top 12, top 15 guy. We got one last question, and then we will head into the chat. And this one comes in from Danny Gatto, and he's asking us just to help him set his lineup a little bit. Pick 2 for PPR this week: Rondale Moore, Tony Pollard, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Elijah Mitchell, Antonio Brown. We've got a start 2 and bench 3. Chad, what are you doing in this situation? Who are you starting out of this group?
Well, if Antonio Brown is active, and it sounds like, I think it's tomorrow, the next day, he will be back from the COVID list, that you start Tampa Bay, the 3 notable wide receivers in Tampa Bay. You start those guys when they are active every week. Now, they may not all 3 produce, but we saw a big time upside from all 3 of them in, different combinations through 3 weeks already. So that one is in stone. I would go with Edwards-Helaire of the rest. I think we have questions abound. The Tony Pollard should be the starter. And if you look at any of the utilization stuff, it's laughable that anyone really says that. Rondale Moore, he needs more routes. He needs more snaps. And he had a good game. He had a broken touchdown. And this is coming from someone that loves Rondale Moore. So he's just simmering, and it's not yet. Sorry. And I think Elijah Mitchell, there's a lot of risk. He's coming back. I didn't think he was that great. He had a longer touchdown in his one game of note. Other than that, I thought he looked pretty pedestrian. So how does it look now with Kyle Juszczyk and Trey Sermon, and just, again, the Shanahan factor of who knows, and you wouldn't be surprised the next week. So I think with everybody else, you go with the starting running back for the Chiefs, and then you go with one of Tom Brady's best receivers.
Chad, I watch your show a lot, and when I'm watching your show, I just find myself nodding along with so much of what you say. And now we're on this show together, and I find myself doing the same.
We're about ready to co-own a dynasty team together. Oh, watch yourself.
How about it?
Can we just become best friends?
But I'm with you, man. Antonio Brown, I think that he's a no-brainer here. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, same thing. I do like all of these options, and I'm with you on Rondale Moore. Everybody got so excited over the big week that he had, but almost half of those points did come on one busted play. Elijah Mitchell worries me a little bit, and honestly, it's that whole San Francisco offense really worries me, at least as far as the backfield. Trey Sermon did not look good last week, and now there's talks that they might be trading for another running back. So I don't really want anything to do with Elijah Mitchell. I'm going Antonio Brown and CEH here. What about you, Troy? Who are you starting out of this bunch?
Well, we 3 out of 3. I'm going Antonio. To me, it was pretty easy, right? And then with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's actually top 10 in rushing attempts, and he's top 10 in rushing yards. The only thing he's not getting the targets, unfortunately, but he never gets the targets. But hey, when you're in the Chiefs offense, give me the starting running back in that Chiefs offense. Antonio Brown, you guys already made the arguments. And just like you said, Rondale, I love Rondale Moore too. I wish I could pick Rondale Moore, but his usage, he's not getting enough snaps for me to confidently start him. Tony Pollard, again, he's getting a lot less. He's efficient with his touches, but he's just not getting enough touches or opportunities for me. So I can't confidently play Tony Pollard either. Elijah Mitchell, you already said everything we need to say about Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah, so I think we're all in agreement here. These are the 2 guys that you need to start. Let's go ahead to the chat. We got some questions in here. Before we do that, Troy, why don't you let everybody know real quickly a little bit about the daily email update?
Absolutely. So if you're into shows like this, you're probably a serious fantasy player. You need to get the Footballguys Premium Membership, as well as you need to sign up for the daily email update. If you aren't already, every day Joe Bryant will bring you at least the latest from Footballguys, news, transactions, rumors, all the articles and shows from Footballguys staff. So make sure you sign up.
Thank you for that, Troy. And before we go to the chat, we do actually have one more question that we missed here, and this is a good one. We'll fire through this real quickly, and then we'll go to the chat. Jay asked us on Twitter, who should I drop? Tyson Williams, Eli Mitchell, or Mike Davis? All 3 of these guys, were pretty exciting heading into week 1, and now after 3 weeks of football, the balloon has really, really deflated. So Troy, start off out of this group. Who are you dropping?
Mitchell. I think it's got to go Mitchell because, again, coming off the injury, we don't know how he's going to be used in the offense. Trey Sermon looked really not great. I know Elijah Mitchell didn't look fantastic in his debut, but he dang sure looked better than Trey Sermon. But Tyson Williams, it was a really weird game script, the way the Detroit game went, but he's still the RB1, so I'm going to drop Mitchell.
What about you, Chad? Who are you dropping out of this group?
I'm going to ruffle some feathers. Watch out, birds. Here we go. Tyson Williams. I'm going to cut Tyson Williams here. Why? I don't think he's going to matter to the results of your season. He's a flimsy 1A. Latavius Murray has been getting more in the mix. He saw more rushing attempts this past week. And Tyson Williams is going to have a receiving limitation, minimum. He's also going to have heavy competition from the real running back one, Lamar Jackson. And you're saying Devonta Freeman's getting in the mix. They keep talking up Le'Veon Bell. I'll believe it when I see it. But the point is, week one was kind of the best situation. And I mean, now you need injuries for clarity. And I just don't think he's that great of a start. I think there's a low PPR upside. You're praying for a touchdown. I think they're gonna kid glove him. So I think everybody else, I can paint an easier story with Mike Davis and with Elijah Mitchell that they can actually provide predictable impact. And Tyson Williams, for me, has the most dicey road situationally, but also how that team is constructed.
Yeah, Tyson Williams, he was everyone's favorite pickup in the preseason, but then they brought in Latavius Murray and they brought in, like you said, Le'Veon Bell, and really muddied the waters, and people didn't want to adjust their take after that. They were like, well, I already spent a bunch of fab on Tyson Williams, so let's just keep pumping him up. But I'm with you, man. His ceiling really isn't there. I mean, he would need multiple injuries to be significant. So, God, it pains me to say this, but I'm dropping Tyson Williams as well. All right, let's head to the chat. And the first question we have here is coming in from Steven on YouTube. And he's saying, should I trade AJ Brown for David Montgomery? And when we were talking about our hypothetical AJ Brown situation, David Montgomery was almost the guy that I threw out instead of James Robinson. So, Troy, start us off here. AJ Brown for David Montgomery. Are you making that deal?
I think I would. If I was RB needy, and again, this is very dependent. This is dependent on the rest of my team, but I do believe that David Montgomery is going to see much better weeks. Like, he hasn't looked great the past 2 weeks or so, but to me, he has the ability to be an RB1 in that offense. So I would do it, but it's really dependent on how the rest of your team looks.
Dynasty,
Chad, you had some things to say about the Tennessee Titans
this
earlier.
is for redraft. Sorry, this is for redraft.
Yeah. I was going to say Dynasty, no. Redraft, yes.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing would be, if you're looking at a flex and we're actually looking these guys straight up versus each other, give me the workhorse running back, in general, because that's more predictable. If you've got questions, what do you think? If they have passing game and quarterback questions, what are they going to do? They're going to simplify the offense. They're going to run it through their 3-down back. So I think there's less questions, honestly. And Brown, right now, how many weeks are you going to burn before he's back? So redraft is a sprint. And if you lose 2-3 weeks, and he could have a recurrence too. So again, questions abound with both players, but I would trust David Montgomery just a little bit more with what we know now.
Yeah. And I'm trying not to, be a homer here when talking about my Chicago Bears, but I think that last week was the rock bottom. I don't think that we're going to see a worse outing for the Bears than we saw last week. And Montgomery is going to be a workhorse. He might cede some touches to Tariq Cohen once he's back, but nothing that's going to be huge or very impactful. And David Montgomery still is a workhorse. I feel like there's a great opportunity to go out and buy low on him right now because, once this team starts clicking again, and if Bill Lazor takes over the play calling, which was really the difference maker for David Montgomery last year, a lot of the media and fans are pressing for it again right now. We could see something similar to last year where he's seeing 25 touches a game and putting up some consistent RB1 weeks. So I think there's an opportunity to buy low on David Montgomery, and I would make that trade in redraft. Got another question in from YouTube, and this one comes from Jedi Sith Lord 23. I am in a 12-team dynasty league. I was able to pick up Justin Fields last week. I already have Russell Wilson and Joe Burrow. What should I do? Keep all three? I think if this is a super flex league, of course. If it's a single QB, I'm a little more on the fence. So Chad, what are you doing? If this is single QB, are you keeping Justin Fields?
I think it comes down to roster size. The fact that he was available probably points to something FFPC like, which is 20-man rosters. Definitely it's below 25. If he was available for pickup, even in a one quarterback. So I would say in general, 3 quarterbacks is suboptimal. Be really careful, especially having Wilson and Burrow, who you're going to be keeping on the big picture. So I would have some pause. I know there's big rushing upside, but at this point, developmental and typically rookie quarterbacks don't provide that upside that you really want or think should be there, or maybe you see in flashes. So I think you have to be really careful. And like I said, if it's 20-man rosters, 22, 18, something like that, which it probably is, I would say no. And the fact that he was available means he was probably dropped because he was probably drafted in your annual draft.
Yeah, and that's kind of the biggest thing that jumped out to me is if you were able to pick him up last week, it's probably pretty short benches. You could probably get somebody of equal or similar value at another time. But Troy, are you in agreement on this, or are you sticking with all three quarterbacks?
I'm in agreement. If you have a deep bench, cool. But I'm never really gonna probably be starting him over Burrow or Russell Wilson, you know. And if it's single QB, again, it's if your bench is deep, cool. If you have a short bench, then there's no point in really keeping them because you already have your backup QB for bye week. So
Yeah, bye weeks are coming. Yeah,
exactly. So I'm like, you already got your two to worry about that. So you don't really need them. If you have a short bench, I'm fine releasing them.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement on that one. On to the next one. Should I drop Kenyon Drake and get Sony Michel as a handcuff for Darrell Williams? We kind of thought Kenyon Drake was going to be the handcuff, but Peyton Barber is out here balling out now. Chad, you look ready to take this question. So what are you doing?
Yeah, I think Drake didn't need that show us a lot. That even if Josh Jacobs is out, we are not going to start Kenyon Drake. So where are we? At least we have that with Sony Michel. Now, will he hold up to many 20-touch games? That would be a big question. But I would say similar offenses. I would prefer the Rams. But Raiders have been optimized. I mean, they've been absolutely a juggernaut through 3 weeks. But the Drake factor of he's going to be, not even considered an auto start primary backup when Jacobs is out, and Jacobs is returning. So you almost have to view him as a running back 2.5 on this depth chart. And I would say right now, hate the Drake.
I'm with you, Chad. What about you, Troy?
I still can't believe Peyton Barber is a thing again. First of all, to start, but
that's Matt Waldman's boy. Matt
trains leaving the station. Troy, get your ticket.
No, look, I picked up some Peyton Barber. It's just crazy. I got him, but I feel gross about it. But Kenyon Drake, the fact that Kenyon Drake, but the fact that Kenyon Drake can't beat out Barber for touches is concerning. Give me Sony Michel and I think better offense.
Yeah, I'm in agreement here. I was hoping that, and I said this, I tweeted it out when Josh Jacobs was declared out. I said, I think Kenyon Drake without Josh Jacobs is better than Josh Jacobs with Kenyon Drake, but that ended up not being the case. Kenyon Drake's role is pretty solid. And if Josh Jacobs isn't there, it doesn't really benefit Kenyon Drake at all.
Why they pay Drake? Just one sidebar comment. I mean, why did they pay him if he's not even the backup running back? What are we doing, Raiders?
I mean, this Raiders team has made a lot of head-scratching moves at the time, but they're consistently getting better year in and year out. So maybe there is some sort of process to
overpay running backs, and your whole team gets better.
Yeah, I mean, the Bears tried it with Tariq Cohen, and it's not working yet. But hey, fingers crossed. Maybe that's the trick to build a solid franchise. All right, let me take a look and see if we got any other questions in here. All right, we got somebody saying, should I take a chance of Zach Wilson as my QB2? I really like the talent. I mean, Zach Wilson has looked absolutely disgusting through his first few starts, but there were some things that we got excited about in the offseason. Troy, would you be confident starting Zach Wilson as a QB2?
He had an okay week 1. This is week 2 and week 3 were putrid, but as a QB2, look, I'm in the same dilemma. I actually have a 3-quarterback league where I have to start 3 quarterbacks, and he's one of them, and I don't feel confident. That's sad to say.
He's got pretty good value in a 3-quarterback league.
Exactly.
That baseline drops all the way down to nothing.
I know, but it's just like, but I say that you shouldn't feel good about it, but it really depends. If you have no other options, he's a QB, and he does have rushing upside. Just haven't seen it, but I say go ahead, but temper your expectations. But if you don't have anyone else, then yeah, play him.
I mean, at least this week, they've got a decent matchup against the Titans, who are just obliterated in the secondary. So if there is an opportunity for Zach Wilson to drop back or to bounce, I can't even say bounce back because he hasn't really been up there at all. But if there's an opportunity for him to show up, it could be this week against the Titans. Chad, are you rolling the dice with Zach Wilson as your QB2 this week?
Yeah, this is redraft, and this is sort of planning for the bye week, or an injury in the future. Honestly, I probably wouldn't bother, unless it's if every single starting quarterback is already rostered, then I would say you kind of have to at this point hold, but I would still be trying to pivot. I mean, could you maybe give your wide receiver 6 and Zach Wilson and maybe get Teddy Bridgewater, or can you get more stability? Because I don't trust Wilson as far as I can throw him. And he has this like Jimmy Garoppolo syndrome of thinking he can make every throw, and just the mind numbing interceptions and decisions. And it's like he's going to spin around on a Ferris wheel and just throw the ball sometimes, like Uncle Rico. I have big time questions here, and hopefully my Corey Davis shares can survive this.
Yeah, I am with you, and going forward, I will only be referring to Zach Wilson as Uncle Rico until he shows me anything differently. I like that one, Chad. All right, last question in the chat, and then we will sign off here. Brandon Prime is asking us: is JJ Taylor worth picking up in a 20-man league now that James White is out for the season with a hip injury? Chad, what are you thinking? Are you picking up JJ Taylor?
Please don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this, Braden. I'm going to say, so we are, 20 man. I thought it was 20 man rosters.
No, 20-man league.
Yeah.
All right, then yes, of course.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Rhetorical question. Does JJ Taylor have a pulse? Then yes. Okay. Then he's eligible to be picked up in a 20-man league. Now we still don't know the roster size. But I have concerns that I don't think he's going to replicate James White. James White is very good at what he does. Obviously it's wide open, but they still have a lot of questions about what it's going to look like. Now, the disconcerting part about Damian Harris is that he didn't pick up pretty much any of that receiving work last week. It went over. We still got Ramondre Stevenson on ice. He might be in the doghouse until November or something. Who knows? But I just think it's ambiguous enough that, yes, but the first good game, I'd probably be looking to flip him.
Yeah, I'd be picking up JJ Taylor as well. And it's, the Patriots, they're kind of in the same situation with Baltimore or San Francisco. They have this just whole, carousel of not really great running backs. So I do like JJ Taylor as a talent. And if he's able to just step into that James White role, sure, you got a great value there. But like you said, James White is great at what he does. JJ Taylor is good at what he does. So I don't think there's going to be an opportunity for him to come in and see, 5 to 7 targets per game like James White did. But in a deep league, he's definitely worth picking up. And I do like the idea that you had of just trying to trade him after a big week. Troy, do you have anything else to add to the JJ Taylor talk here?
The 20-man league, he can't be picky. Just like Chad said, if you have a pulse, you're going to take him. But yeah, my temporary expectation, he's not going to be James White, but he could be. In a 20-man league, you're just trying to play anybody again. Has a chance of starting or playing.
Exactly. All right, Troy, why don't you let everyone know about the Footballguys Premium Membership, and then we'll go ahead and sign off here.
Of course. Well, if you're into shows like this, you're probably a serious fantasy player. You need to get the Footballguys Premium Membership. Whether you're playing Redraft, Dynasty, DFS, we've got you covered. Go to footballguys.com and click the orange button in the top right-hand corner to sign up. We'll do the work while you do the winning.
Absolutely. Chad, hope you got your ball ready because I want to see you sink this basket as I'm signing off right here. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in to another episode of the Footballguys Mailbag Show. I'm Dave Kluge. I'm here with Troy King and Chad Parsons today. You can find us every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Thank you very much for tuning in. Way to smash that dunk in, Chad. We will catch you next Wednesday.